Hey, Richard Myers here. Hey, thank you for joining me. This is an additional video. I did one, just the last one I did was on the celebration of our pending departure, taking that from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. And it was just the last time I talked about the crown of righteousness that will be given to all of us who are loving his appearance. And that was from 2 Timothy, what was it, chapter 4, verses 6 through 8. In this video, what I'd like to do is establish the fact that God has a calendar. Now this, we could look at Galatians chapter 4 and verse 4, and it says, "But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law." When the fullness of time had come. And so God has, and this is, I'll go back to Leviticus, where God established his calendar with 7 appointments. And you can actually take the Hebrew word that he uses there in Leviticus 23, and you could translate it as appointment or time to get together, that kind of a thing. A dental appointment or a family anniversary or something like that, an appointment. And I've mentioned God gives 7 appointments or 7 feast days, 4 in the spring and 3 in the fall. And so I just wanted to establish a little more firmly that God has a calendar, because it's January of 2025, and all of us are setting up our calendars. I have mine here on my desk, and put hair appointments and birthdays, and our tax filings are due this pretty soon, and so we set up our calendar for the year. And I just established in the last video that this year, that first fall appointment, or that first fall date on God's calendar, is Yom Teruah, or the day of blowing of trumpets. And you can go to Leviticus 23 and read. Now, in Leviticus, I was listening to a Hebrew speaker the other day on YouTube, and he mentioned that the phrase that introduces these appointments is not specific. He's not giving these appointments to Israel as a nation. He was, in the sense as he was giving it to all humanity, and in that sense it was for the Jewish nation, or the Israel. But there was a more general presentation there. It was, in a sense, given as God's eternal calendar of appointments for all humanity for all times. And we've seen that work out. And when Jesus came, he came in the fullness of time. In other words, at the proper date, at the proper time, he came. And then he fulfilled these appointments or feast days perfectly as the first fruits from the dead, and of course then on the date of Pentecost. Now, another reason why I'm so firm on this as God's calendar, and I've mentioned it several times in other videos, but I just want to bring it to you in this small, short video. When Jesus, he had been resurrected and he was spending time with the disciples. What a precious time that was. And it was critical. It wasn't that long of time with them, but he was teaching them. He was explaining to them what they were going to face going forward. And he said to them that they should wait. And I would have asked, wait, Lord, why don't we get going right away? He said, wait. And what he was doing was saying we can't move ahead until we hit the calendar date, which was the day of Pentecost. And then he says, on that day you shall receive power. So this is very critical to get the timing here. Number one, he held to the calendar, so that gives us an idea that this calendar is sacrosanct. It's important. God will follow it perfectly. And then he says, you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. Then we find that in the reception of this power, he made us members one of another. This verse is mentioned multiple times in the New Testament. that we were baptized into the Holy Spirit and made members one of another. And so I take it that the power is in the union of believers with one another. And so I take from that this principle then, we should never minister alone. In other words, we should never go out alone. And we should always have somebody with us. We all should have supporters behind us. We should all have people surrounding us. Because what happens is when you have to work with other people, you have to learn to get along. And it's in the power then of the Holy Spirit that this union is most effective. And I just wanted to mention that. But the key thing is that God stayed to his calendar. Then from that, I'm simply reasoning that if God stayed to that calendar so judiciously, so specifically, it seems reasonable then that he would come to pick us up, our pending departure, if you will, on the next feast day in the fall, the feast day of Yom Teruah, or the day of blowing of trumpets. And it is not coincidental then in my mind that in every reference to him coming to pick us up, in Acts it says, this Jesus that you've seen go into the clouds will come in like manner. And so it seems reasonable that he would come to pick us up on this feast day of Yom Teruah. And so, again, we don't know if it's this year, next year. We don't know the year. It's been 2,000 years that have passed under the count on the time of the church. But it seems as though, given the existence of Israel and given the prophetic times, it says to be aware of what's going on. And so looking at what's going on, it seems as though we're short, our time is short, and he's going to come to pick us up. But we, because we are loving his appearance, celebrate our pending departure each year on this date. And we make the reasoned judgment that it could be on this date because of God's meticulous adherence to his calendar. Now, somebody could argue with me, and I think could make a good argument against my conclusion, but I think my argument is valid as well. Hey, it's nice to be with you. I'm going to upload several videos, and I hope you look forward to them. And it's been nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me.